The unthinkable. Question: the Galactic Council chamber was alive with 1,000 voices. Creatures from countless worlds sat in rings of glowing seats, each one whispering and arguing in different tongues. The air shimmered with light from holographic banners that floated above the chamber, showing the symbols of empires that stretched across the stars. It was a place of power, of law, and of tradition. Here, no rule was ever broken, and no heart ever dared to rise above politics. Yet, on that day, silence fell like a heavy curtain. The moment was burned into every mind, because the impossible had just happened. An alien princess, dressed in silver robes that glowed faintly with energy, had stood from her seat. Her voice, though soft, echoed across the chamber with undeniable strength. She had looked not at the council, not at her father the king, not even at the galaxy itself. She had looked at a single man, at a human soldier standing below the council floor. Her words struck like thunder. "Human, tell me the price of your heart. What must I do to be your wife?" The chamber gasped. Some creatures shrieked, others hissed. A wave of confusion and disbelief rippled through the gathering. In all known history, no alien princess had ever declared her desire to marry outside her species. Let alone to a human, humanity was new to the galactic stage, seen as young, reckless, and fragile. To bind herself to one of them was not only scandalous, it was forbidden. The soldier did not move. He stood in the center of the floor, surrounded by the light of the council. His uniform was simple, scarred by battle. His face showed the lines of war, not of royalty. He had been summoned here only to speak of peace, not to become the center of a storm. His eyes met hers, and for a long moment he said nothing. Around them, voices rose. "This is treason," one alien noble cried. His skin was scaled, his eyes glowing like molten stone. "She mocks her people," shouted another. "This is manipulation," hissed a third, pointing a claw at the human. "He has bewitched her." The king of the princess's empire slammed his hand against the council rail. His face was hidden behind a crown of gold and steel. His voice roared like a storm. "Daughter, silence yourself." But the princess did not lower her head. She kept her eyes locked on the human. Her voice trembled, not with fear, but with truth. "I will not be silent. My heart belongs to him." The soldier felt the weight of every gaze upon him. He could feel the hatred of alien nobles, the disbelief of the council, and the burning hope of the princess. He knew that to answer her was not simple. If he accepted, he would stand against empires. If he refused, he would break the heart of the only one who had dared to believe in him. But before he could speak, the chamber broke into chaos. Some demanded the princess be stripped of her title. Some demanded the human be executed for daring to inspire such feelings. Guards moved closer, their weapons glowing with dangerous light. Still, the princess stood tall. Her voice carried above the storm. "You all fear what you do not understand. You fear that a human's heart is stronger than your thrones. You fear that love could change the balance of power." Her words cut through the air like blades. She turned back to the soldier, her eyes shining with tears that refused to fall. "But I ask again, human, what is the price of your heart?" The council chamber trembled with fury, but also with something else. For the first time, whispers of awe replaced whispers of scorn. The sight of a princess risking everything for a human was not just shocking, it was inspiring. Some leaned forward, curious. Some even felt their own hearts stir with questions they had never dared to ask. The soldier remained silent. His chest rose and fell. His hands clenched at his sides. He wanted to speak, but his words, whatever they might be, would decide more than love. They would decide the fate of nations. He was only one man, one human among countless stars, yet here he stood at the center of history, because an alien princess had asked him the unthinkable question, and though the chamber roared with outrage, suspicion, and fear, all he could see was her, the human's dilemma. The human soldier stood frozen in the center of the great chamber, surrounded by voices that hissed and shouted from every corner of the council. The princess's words still echoed in his mind, sharp and impossible to escape. She had asked him not for power, not for treasure, but for his heart. And now the weight of the galaxy pressed down on his shoulders. For years he had been nothing more than a soldier, a man who fought battles no one remembered. His life had been blood, mud, and survival. He had lost comrades in wars that others forgot. He carried scars not only on his body but deep in his spirit. He had never imagined that in this hall of rulers and empires, his fate would change forever with a single question from a princess whose eyes carried both fire and sorrow. The council chamber was restless. Nobles leaned forward, aliens of every size and form glaring at him as if he had stolen something sacred. The weight of their suspicion pressed against him. He could hear whispers spoken in languages his translators barely kept up with. Some accused him of trickery, others of witchcraft. Some said he must have poisoned her mind, because how could a royal heir of a star-born empire fall in love with a man from a world that had only just reached the stars? The soldier's jaw tightened. He knew that one wrong word, one wrong step could seal his fate. The princess, however, did not look away. She stood tall, her silver robes glowing faintly in the dim light. Her hands trembled only slightly, but her eyes were steady. She had spoken before all rulers, defied her father, and now the only thing she waited for was his answer. The human's chest ached at the sight of her courage, yet the question tore at him inside. For how could he give her an answer when the price of his heart was not something she could pay with crowns or kingdoms? His heart had been carved by war, by pain, by sacrifice, and the only thing it longed for was truth. In his mind, memories came unbidden. He remembered the first time he had seen her, not in silks or crowns, but in the ruins of a burned village where she had stood among her people, trying to shield children from the wreckage of war. He had been there as part of a peacekeeping force, and he had watched her refuse to abandon her people even when the fire rained from the skies. That moment had carved itself into his soul. It was not her title that had caught him, nor her beauty, though it was beyond compare. It was the strength of her spirit, the way she chose compassion where others chose power. That was the day he realized she was different, and that was the day his own heart had begun to betray him. Now, in the present, he could not speak those truths aloud. The chamber was full of hungry ears, waiting to twist his words into weapons. He could not confess love, because they would brand it as manipulation. He could not confess silence, because it would break her spirit. So he stood there, caught in a war not of weapons but of hearts. His mind spun with questions. What if he accepted? Would humanity be dragged into war? What if he refused? Would she be cast aside? Shamed for daring to love him, the king's voice thundered again, echoing across the chamber like a storm. "Human, answer my daughter. Do you seek to mock our house? Do you think yourself worthy of her hand?" His glare was filled with both fury and fear, for he knew the words of his daughter had already shaken the pillars of his rule. Other nobles added their voices, demanding judgment, demanding punishment. Their anger was sharp and poisonous, yet beneath it the soldier could feel another current, curiosity. Some of them did not jeer, they leaned closer, waiting to hear if a human would truly dare to defy all tradition. The soldier finally raised his head. His voice was quiet, but carried across the chamber. "I did not come here to steal a throne, nor to claim a crown. I came as a soldier of my people. I came to speak of peace." His words caused a wave of mocking laughter among some of the alien lords. They thought him weak. They thought his refusal to seize power was proof that humanity was unworthy. But the princess did not laugh. She only stepped forward, her voice soft but unshaken. "Peace is not enough, human. I ask not for your armies or your weapons. I ask for your heart. If you will not answer, then all of this means nothing." The human's throat burned. He could not tell her what she longed to hear, not yet. His heart beat like a drum. His silence stretched until the chamber shook again with fury. The council began to demand a trial, some way to prove whether humanity's spirit was real or an illusion. Guards surrounded him, weapons glowing, and still the princess's eyes never left his face. She waited, as though the galaxy itself could collapse around her, and she would not move until he spoke. He realized then that this was no longer about him alone. Her words, her plea, had changed the game. If he gave her his heart, it was not only marriage, it was a challenge to every throne in the stars. But if he denied her, he would lose something far greater than life. He would lose the one soul who had seen him not as a soldier, not as a tool, but as a man. And so the human stood, caught in his greatest battle, a battle where no weapon could help him, a battle where the price was his own soul. And though the council raged, though the king threatened, though the galaxy trembled, he understood one truth. The answer he gave would shape the destiny of more than just two hearts. It would shape the fate of humanity itself. Whispers of betrayal. The storm inside the Galactic Council chamber did not end when the human soldier remained silent. In fact, his silence became like a spark that fell into a forest of dry leaves. The nobles who had long despised humanity now found the excuse they had been waiting for. Their voices carried through the grand hall. Poisonous and sharp, they whispered of betrayal, of danger, of curses that had been brought into the chamber the moment a human was allowed to stand among them. Their words flowed like venom through the ears of their allies, feeding doubt and igniting fury when noble, his skin layered with blue crystal shards that pulsed with faint light, rose and pointed a clawed hand toward the soldier. "Do you not see?" he hissed. "This human has bewitched our princess. He stands here with no crown, no name, no lineage, and yet she dares to declare her love for him before us all. This is not love, it is treachery. Humanity seeks to rise above its station, to place itself in thrones it does not deserve." His words were met with cheers from those who had always looked at Earth with suspicion. Another voice joined, low and serpentine, coming from a shadow-skinned alien with eyes that burned like coals. "The girl is blinded by weakness, and weakness is the disease of humans. If we do not cut this sickness from her heart, it will spread to her people and infect us all. The human must be removed, quietly if need be, before his presence brings war to every star system." The council floor shook with growls and murmurs, agreements wrapped in hate, but behind those loud voices were softer ones, whispers that carried not only anger but fear. Some nobles leaned close to each other, their words hidden behind clawed hands and hooded faces. "If the princess binds herself to him, what will become of our power?" one whispered. "Her throne is already fragile. Her father grows old. If she joins her fate to humanity, we will lose our influence," another muttered. "Do not be blind. It is not her heart we should fear. It is what humanity will gain. For if one human marries into a royal line, the rest of their kind will rise, and soon they will no longer bow to us." The human soldier felt the weight of their whispers, though he could not hear them all. He saw the way their eyes shifted, not with curiosity, but with hunger. He understood that this was no longer about love. This was about politics, about empires, about the ancient fear that had always clung to humanity since the first day Earth entered the stars. The galaxy feared them because they did not break easily, because their hearts did not bow to chains. And now the princess had given them reason to fear even more. The princess, however, stood unshaken. Her eyes burned with a fire that no whisper could dim. She turned her gaze across the nobles and spoke, her voice carrying the strength of her people. "You call it treachery, you call it sickness, but I call it truth. You fear what you cannot control. You fear that a human's love is stronger than your power. You fear that a soldier's heart can stand against your armies. And you are right to fear, because my choice is not weakness, it is strength." Her words silenced some, but others grew louder. Rage twisted their tongues. The king himself slammed his hand upon the glowing rail of his throne, his face hidden but his fury plain. "Daughter, you shame us all. You have been deceived. And this deception will end tonight." His guards stepped forward, tall figures wrapped in dark armor. Their weapons hummed with lethal energy as they formed a line between the princess and the human. The soldier's fists tightened. His instincts screamed to fight. But he knew this was not a battlefield of blades. This was a battlefield of politics, of honor, and of fragile hearts. If he raised his weapon now, he would confirm every whisper of betrayal. If he stayed still, he would risk being crushed under their lies. His mind raced. caught between duty to his people and the unspoken bond he shared with the princess. In the shadows of the chamber, far from the glowing light of the council floor, other forces moved. Among the nobles who whispered of betrayal were those who did not wish to wait for judgment. Already messages were being sent through hidden channels. Already plots were forming to silence the human soldier before dawn. Some wanted to poison him, others wanted to ambush him in the alleys of the Star Station. Their whispers were seeds of murder. Watered with fear and hate, the princess sensed it. She had grown in these halls and she knew the nature of her people. She leaned forward, her voice lowered. Yet it reached the soldier clearly. "Be careful, they will come for you. They fear you because they know the truth. They will try to break you before you can answer." Her warning was not born of fear for herself, but of fear for him. For though she was ready to lose her throne, she could not bear to lose him. The soldier gave the smallest nod. His silence remained, but his eyes spoke back. They told her he understood. They told her he was ready. And though the chamber roared with accusations and betrayal, though the air was heavy with threats and anger, there was a quiet moment between them that no whisper could destroy, a bond unspoken yet stronger than iron. And in that moment, while the galaxy plotted his fall, the human realized that the true battle was only beginning. The whispers of betrayal would soon turn into daggers in the dark, and if he wished to protect both himself and the princess, he would have to prove not only his heart, but his strength. The galaxy had begun to move against them, and every shadow now hid an enemy, the hidden reason. The storm of accusations inside the council chamber did not end with the threats of nobles and the furious command of the king. If anything, the hatred only grew heavier, and the whispers of betrayal became louder. Yet, even in that boiling chaos, the princess refused to bow her head. She stepped forward past the guards, ignoring the warning cries of her father, ignoring the sharp glares of alien lords whose voices carried venom. And she stood once again before the human soldier. Her voice trembled not with weakness but with an emotion that made even her enemies fall into silence. "You do not understand why I ask for his heart," she said, her words ringing through the vast hall. "You believe this is a scandal, that this is weakness, that it is treason against my throne. But you are blind, for there is a truth you cannot see, and it is that truth which forced me to stand here today." Her voice lowered, though the silence was so deep that even her whisper carried. "I did not only choose him because my heart longs for him. I chose him because without him, my people will fall." The chamber stirred with disbelief. Some laughed bitterly, others hissed with anger, but her words had planted a seed of unease. The human soldier felt his chest tighten as her eyes turned to him with quiet desperation. She was not a woman chasing a forbidden dream. She was a leader who had seen something no one else dared to face. And now her secret came spilling into the chamber. She spoke of visions. Not dreams born of hope, but of warnings carved into her mind by seers who had long served her house. They had whispered to her of betrayal that would rise from within her own blood. They had spoken of a shadow that would consume her empire, a war that would not come from humanity or from distant foes, but from the very family sworn to protect her. She told them that in every vision of survival, only one truth remained, that a human heart, unbroken by fear, would stand as the shield against the collapse of her people. At first, the council roared with laughter. "Prophecies," spat one noble, his crystal skin glowing in mocking light. "Old lies told to weak rulers who cling to fear," another hissed, "and you would risk our future because of riddles whispered in the dark." But the princess did not retreat. She held her ground with unshaken eyes. "Call them riddles if you wish, but I have seen it. My father's throne will shatter. My bloodline will betray me, and the only hope that remains lies not in power or armies, but in the strength of this human's heart." The human soldier felt the weight of her confession sink into him like a blade. He had thought her question was born of love alone, but now he saw the truth hidden beneath her courage. She was not only asking to be his wife, she was asking him to stand as a shield between her people and destruction. His chest burned with conflict, for he had carried burdens before. He had lost brothers and sisters in battle, but never had he been asked to carry the fate of an empire upon his shoulders. The king's fury grew darker. His voice thundered, "Lies! You shame this council with childish fear. You dishonor me before the galaxy. Do not speak of prophecy when it is your weakness that drives you." Yet his trembling hands betrayed his fear, for deep in his heart he too had heard whispers of unrest within his throne. He knew his court was not loyal. He knew betrayal brewed in shadows, and his daughter's words struck closer to truth than he wished to admit. The nobles seized upon his denial, calling the princess a fool, demanding her removal, demanding the human's execution. The chamber became a storm of voices, and guards began to move again with weapons drawn. But the princess would not retreat. She placed herself before the human, her arms spread wide, her voice sharp as steel. "If you strike him, you strike me. If you condemn him, you condemn me. For my fate and his are now bound together." Her words cut like a blade through the storm, and for a moment the council hesitated. The human looked at her, his heart pounding like a drum. For the first time he saw the full truth in her eyes. She did not only love him, she needed him, not as a soldier, not as a human, but as the one anchor in a galaxy that was ready to devour her. She had risked her throne, her life, and her honor not because of desire, but because she had seen the doom coming for her people, and she had chosen him to stand with her against it. The realization burned through him, filling him with both fear and a strange sense of destiny. He had once thought himself small, a soldier lost in endless wars fought for others. But now he understood that his heart had become the weapon the galaxy feared, and though he had not spoken his answer yet, though the council screamed for his silence, though death itself hung in the air, he knew that soon he would have to choose. He would have to decide if he could carry her truth and stand against the storm that awaited. The chamber fell into chaos once more. The king shouted for silence. Nobles screamed of betrayal. Guards shifted uneasily. And in the shadows unseen, enemies whispered plans to remove both the princess and the human before the night ended. But through it all, the human and the princess locked eyes. In that gaze lay not only love but a dangerous promise, a promise that no prophecy, no throne, no whisper of betrayal could break. And as the storm raged around them, the human realized that this was no longer only about love or even loyalty. This was about survival, about destiny, about the hidden reason that had brought them to this moment. The galaxy itself trembled, though none dared to admit it, because deep in their hearts they all sensed the same truth. If the human's heart could not be broken, then the future would never belong to the council. It would belong to him and to the princess who dared to defy them all. The trial of hearts, the council chamber, was no longer only a place of debate. It had become a battlefield of wills. The princess had spoken her truth. The human had stood in silence, and the galaxy trembled as nobles whispered of treachery and kings shouted of dishonor. Yet in that storm, one voice rose above the rest. Cold and commanding, it belonged to the high arbiter of the council, a being draped in robes of black and gold, his face hidden behind a mask of shifting light. He had watched the chaos unfold with patient silence, and now his judgment fell like a hammer across the chamber. "If the human dares to hold the heart of our princess," the arbiter declared, his voice deep and heavy, "then let him prove the worth of his kind. Let there be no whispers of trickery, no cries of weakness. Let there be a trial, and let it reveal the truth of humanity's spirit." The chamber roared with approval. Some shouted for blood, others for exile. But all agreed on the arbiter's decision. The human would face a trial, a test not of titles or crowns but of his heart, his courage, his loyalty, and his strength would be measured not by his weapons but by his choices. Failure would mean disgrace for the princess and death for the human. Success would change the destiny of more than one world. The human soldier stood still, the words sinking into him like iron weights. He had faced many trials in his life. He had fought on battlefields where the sky rained fire and the earth swallowed the dead. He had endured hunger, pain, and fear. But this was different. This was no simple fight for survival. This was a fight for something greater than himself, and though he had never asked for it, Fate had placed the burden of 2 civilizations upon his shoulders. The princess stepped forward, her voice sharp with anger. "This is cruelty. He is not your pawn. He is not your entertainment. If you demand a trial, then I, too, will stand beside him." But the arbiter raised a hand, silencing her with a gesture that carried the weight of centuries. "No, princess, you have chosen, but now he must prove if your choice was wisdom or folly. The trial is his alone." The king smiled bitterly from his throne, his fury cloaked beneath a mask of cold triumph. "So be it," he said, his voice shaking the air. "If this human survives, then let the galaxy see what he is worth. But if he falls, then let it be remembered that love cannot save a throne, nor bind a crown." His words drew nods from the nobles, many of whom already whispered of traps and schemes to ensure the human's failure. The human's heart pounded in his chest. He looked at the princess, and for a moment the council chamber melted away. Her eyes, filled with both fear and fire, locked onto his. He saw in them a plea, a silent cry not to surrender, not to let their enemies tear apart what had been born between them. He gave a small nod, and though he spoke no words, she understood. He would face the trial. He would endure whatever they placed before him. Not for glory, not for politics, but for her. The council wasted no time. The trial would begin at dawn, and already preparations were being made. The nobles demanded it be harsh. They demanded it break him. They spoke of challenges that no ordinary human could survive. Some whispered of beasts drawn from the darkest worlds, others of riddles meant to twist the mind. Still others demanded trials of sacrifice, where the human would be forced to choose between his own life and another's. The chamber was filled with cruel ideas, each designed to tear him apart. When the council finally adjourned, the human was escorted to a chamber deep within the council's halls. Guards lined the walls, their weapons humming with deadly light. But the princess broke through them before they could stop her. She rushed to him, her hands gripping his arms with desperate strength. "You must be careful," she whispered, her voice breaking for the first time. "They will not give you a fair trial. They will seek your death. They will twist the rules to see you fall, but you must endure. For my people and for me." The human looked at her, his voice low but steady. "I have faced war. I have faced death. This trial is only another battle, and I will not let them break me." His words were simple, yet they carried the weight of his past. He had endured horrors that would have shattered others, and though fear coiled in his heart, it was not stronger than the promise he silently made to her. Night fell heavy on the council station, but whispers carried through the halls like shadows in motion. Assassins plotted, nobles schemed, and even some council members spoke of ensuring the human's failure by bending the trial's path. Yet, in the darkness of his chamber, the soldier did not sleep. He sat alone, his mind replaying every moment, every choice, every scar that had led him to this place, and he understood what was at stake. The trial was not only for him, it was for humanity. It was for the princess. It was for the truth she had spoken about betrayal and survival. If he failed, he would not only die but prove to the galaxy that humans were weak. If he succeeded, then every throne, every noble, every voice that had doubted would be forced to bow to a truth they could no longer deny. And as dawn drew near, as the council gathered once more in their grand chamber, as the arbiter prepared to announce the beginning of the trial, the human soldier walked forward with steady steps. His heart carried not fear but resolve. For he knew the trial of hearts would not only test his strength but reveal whether love, compassion, and sacrifice could stand against the cold cruelty of empires. And though the galaxy watched with hunger for his fall, the human knew in his soul that he would rise. Humanity's answer, the council gathered at dawn, their banners glowing above the chamber like 1,000 eyes watching from the stars. Nobles, kings, warriors, and seers filled the seats, whispering with hunger and hate. They had come not to witness fairness but to see a human broken before them, to crush the princess's defiance, and to silence the dangerous dream that love could cross species and thrones. Yet within the chamber there was also a strange silence, an unspoken anticipation, for though they wished for his fall, All of them knew they were about to see something history would never forget. The High Arbiter stepped forward, his mask shifting like liquid flame, his voice deep and heavy. "Human soldier, you stand accused of dishonor, of witchcraft, of deceiving the princess of the throne. Yet you are given a chance. You will face the trial of hearts. If you endure, you live. If you fail, you die. And the name of humanity will be stained forever." His words fell like iron chains, but the soldier did not flinch. He stood tall, his face steady, his eyes calm. The princess watched him with both pride and fear, her hands clenched as though she could keep him safe by sheer will alone. The first trial began. It was not of blades, but of choice. Before the soldier were placed two prisoners, one human taken from Earth, trembling with fear, and one alien child from the princess's own people. Both were chained, both were weak, and the Arbiter's voice echoed. "Choose, human, you may free only one. The other will perish. Show us what your heart values most." The council leaned forward, eager to see him betray one side, eager to twist his choice into shame, but the soldier did not move to either chain. Instead, he dropped to his knees, his hands pulling at the locks of both. His voice rang through the chamber. "I will not choose who deserves to live. Both will walk free, or I will die with them." His defiance shook the chamber. Some shouted in rage, others whispered in awe. The guards tried to stop him, but with strength born not of rage but of determination, he tore the chains apart, blood running down his hands, and lifted both the human and the alien child to safety. The chamber erupted, not with laughter but with shock. The second trial began. This time it was not of compassion but of sacrifice. The soldier was placed within a chamber of fire, the air burning with heat. In the center stood a relic of immense power, one that could ensure his survival. But on the other side of the flames stood a stranger, a wounded noble from a species that had spat venom at humanity since its first steps into the stars. The Arbiter's voice echoed again. "Take the relic and save yourself, or cross the fire and save the one who would never save you." The soldier's body ached. His skin blistered, but his choice was instant. He walked into the flames, shielding the stranger with his body, carrying him out even as the fire scorched his flesh. When he emerged, burned but alive, the noble he had saved wept in silence. The council sat stunned, for they had expected him to choose selfishness. They had expected him to mirror the cruelty they knew so well. Instead, he had chosen pain. He had chosen sacrifice. The third trial came, and it was one of truth. The Arbiter asked, "Human, what do you desire? Speak, for now is your chance. Claim the princess, claim her throne, and claim the power to rule beside her, or walk away with nothing. What is the price of your heart?" The chamber held its breath, for this was the question that mattered most. The soldier's face was pale from the wounds of fire, his arms still bleeding from the chains. Yet his eyes were clear, his voice rose steady, carrying through the silence. "My heart is not for sale. It cannot be bought with crowns, nor with thrones, nor with empires. If she loves me, it is hers freely. If she does not, then it remains mine. That is the only truth I have." The silence that followed was heavier than thunder. For the first time, many of the nobles did not shout. They did not mock. They stared, unsettled, because the answer was something they had never expected. In their world, power was always bought, loyalty was always purchased. But here stood a human who spoke of a heart that no wealth could command. It was not weakness, it was strength they could not understand. The princess's eyes filled with tears she could no longer hide. She had always known, deep in her spirit, that this was the truth that set humanity apart. And now, before the galaxy, he had spoken it. Not for her throne, not for her empire, but for her alone. His words carved into the hearts of all who listened. Whether they admitted it or not, the council chamber began to tremble with voices, some in fury, some in awe. The Arbiter raised his hand again, his voice calm yet strangely shaken. "The trials are complete. The human has endured. He has shown compassion where cruelty was expected. He has chosen sacrifice where selfishness was demanded. He has spoken truth where lies were easier. Let the council judge. The nobles were divided. Some screamed for his death, unwilling to accept that humanity could stand with such strength. Others remained silent, unable to deny what they had seen. A few even nodded in quiet respect. For the first time, the chamber was not united in hate, but split by doubt. The human stood there, bloodied, burned, and exhausted but unbroken. He did not bow. He did not plead. He simply waited, his eyes locked on the princess. And in that gaze, the answer had already been given. He had proven not only his worth, but humanity's spirit, a spirit that could not be bought or broken. And though the council raged, though the king trembled with fury, though enemies whispered in shadows, the truth had already taken root. The galaxy had witnessed humanity's answer, and it was stronger than any crown, a price beyond power. The chamber shook under the weight of silence after the trials had ended. The human soldier stood battered and bleeding, his uniform torn, his skin marked by fire, and his hands still raw from broken chains. Yet, despite the agony carved into his body, his posture was unbroken. His eyes, clear and steady, remained fixed on the princess who had risked everything for him. She stared back with tears that glistened like stars, for in his trials he had not only saved strangers and endured suffering, but had shown the entire galaxy the true nature of his heart. The High Arbiter raised his hand, his voice carrying across the vast chamber. The human has faced every trial placed before him. He has endured without surrender. He has chosen compassion when cruelty was demanded, sacrifice when selfishness was offered, and truth when power tempted him. The council must now decide, is he worthy of the princess? Is humanity worthy of respect among the stars? The council erupted with chaos. Some nobles screamed for his death, their voices venomous and desperate. They cried that his compassion was weakness, that his refusal to claim a throne proved he was unfit. Others whispered with unease, unwilling to admit what had been laid bare before them. A few spoke openly in his defense, pointing to the fact that he had passed every challenge where they themselves might have failed. The chamber was divided as it had never been before, and even the king's voice shook with rage as he called for silence. The king rose from his throne, his golden crown glowing under the council's lights, his eyes, sharp with fury, locked on the human. You dare stand before us. You dare to claim the heart of my daughter. You have survived your trial, but survival is not worthiness. You have proven only that you are stubborn, not that you deserve her hand. His words struck like thunder, but they were not met with the cheers he expected. Instead, many in the chamber turned their eyes away, for they had seen what the king refused to acknowledge. The princess stepped forward, her voice clear and unshaken. No, father, you are wrong. He has proven more than worthiness. He has proven that his heart cannot be bought, that his soul cannot be broken, and that his spirit shines brighter than any crown you place on your head. I have seen your court twist in corruption. I have seen nobles whisper betrayal, and I have seen your throne rot under the weight of greed. But I have also seen him, and he has shown the galaxy what true strength is. Her words silenced the chamber, not because of her defiance, but because they carried a truth no one could deny. The Arbiter turned to the soldier once more, his mask shifting like water, his voice deep. Human. The council has asked again and again, what is the price of your heart? Speak now, for the last time, and let all hear your answer. The soldier's voice rose steady and calm, though every part of his body ached with pain. My heart has no price, it cannot be bought with gold. It cannot be sold for power, and it cannot be traded for crowns. It can only be given freely, willingly to the one I choose, and I choose her. Not because she is a princess, not because of her throne, but because she saw me not as a soldier, not as a tool, but as a man. That is the truth of my heart. The chamber fell into silence so deep it felt like the stars themselves had paused. His words were not grand, they were not filled with promises of power, but they carried a weight stronger than empires. The princess's tears fell freely, and she stepped forward, laying her hand in his. Then I give mine to you, not as a princess, not as an heir, but as a woman. Let the galaxy see. Let them rage, let them whisper. It does not matter. For today I choose love over fear, truth over lies, and humanity over cruelty. The king's roar of fury filled the air, but it was drowned out by something stronger. For across the chamber, nobles who had once whispered betrayal now sat in silence, some with eyes lowered, some with awe etched upon their faces. The truth had struck them deeply. They could deny his worth. They could scheme in shadows, but they could not erase what they had seen. Humanity's spirit had been revealed, unyielding and unbroken. The arbiter raised his hand once more, his voice final. The trial is complete. The choice is made. The council cannot deny what has been shown. Humanity has proven its heart. The princess has spoken, and the human has answered. Let it be recorded that this day, in the heart of the galaxy, love defied power, and truth stood stronger than fear. The chamber trembled as history was written. Some stormed out in rage, others sat in silence. But no one could undo what had been witnessed. The soldier and the princess stood together in the center of it all, their hands entwined, their hearts bound. And though enemies waited in the shadows, though betrayal still lurked in corners unseen, they had already changed the future. For the galaxy had asked for the price of a human heart, and the answer had shaken empires. The price was nothing, because it could not be bought. It could only be given, and in giving it, the human had not only won the love of a princess, but he had shown that humanity's greatest power was not its weapons, not its armies, but its spirit, unbreakable, unyielding, and eternal. And so, in that vast chamber of stars where thrones trembled and crowns grew heavy, the alien princess and the human soldier chose each other, not as rulers, not as symbols, but as two hearts bound by a truth greater than power. And as their story spread through the galaxies, whispered from world to world, one lesson echoed louder than all others, that no empire could ever stand against the strength of a human heart.